to our second leadership breakfast. Got a lot of people here, which is great. Have a good agenda to kind of talk about some topics that I think that we're all interested in discussing, and kind of what our solutions are moving forward. So Jeff and I have been really talking about some of these details. We've been meeting with other administrators throughout the county, for other organizations throughout the county, because the coordination that needs to happen between all of these governmental entities is extremely important. Especially in the world that we're in now with the competition for grants that are out there, legislators, both at the state level and the federal level, we're really looking for that coordination. So we're excited to continue to meet like this. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a flag?
On his shoulder.
Flag. That is. We'll just look at
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. They're super helpful here. They're printing off copies of our agenda, so if you didn't bring one, we will have one, but it'll be here in a few minutes. So we've got kind of a full range of topics to discuss today. I want to give Jeff an opportunity to welcome you also.
Yep.
Any opening remarks?
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here today. This is the second one that we've done with our county commission partners and our city council. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hopeful these will continue on into the future, hopefully on a better weather day than this. But we can get together and talk about issues that are concerning to both organizations and other organizations that we partner with throughout the community. So thank you for being here.
When it's raining sideways and the rain's actually coming through the doors, right, it must be a nasty day outside today. So welcome back to Western Washington. So the first topic that we were going to talk about is our jail discussion. So there's been a lot of discussion regarding how do we house prisoners? How many prisoners can we house within our facility? Which is very dependent on a number of items. The most pressing right now is our staffing in our jail. So it's hard to attract corrections workers. I think Chief Hansen is 7 down.
7 to 8, yeah.
7 or 8 employees down right now, and so that definitely impacts the total amount of inmates that we can have. And so trying to prioritize which inmates that we keep within our facility is definitely something that we are concerned about. It also impacts our law enforcement side of things, in the sense that law enforcement has difficulty when they want to arrest somebody and detain them. They have to have a place to detain them. So we've talked about this a number of times, and I think the solution that the city is looking at is what other alternatives do we have? So what I'd like to start it off with, and Chief Hansen, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give an overview of our jail right now. What is the total amount of population that we can handle, and what are the priority prisoners that we're looking at bringing in?
Okay, so our jail is, if we have full staff, we're supposed to have 27, there's 27 funded corrections deputy positions, and to manage a jail population of about 80. Right now we have 18, I think today we have 18 of those 27 positions funded. Actually, it's 25 positions because we converted 2, but so we have 18 out of 25. With the reduced staff population, obviously we had to reduce the population of the jail, the inmate population of the jail, so that we can still manage it safely. The population, the target population right now is at 60, and we're running anywhere between 52 and 60 at any one day. The city has, of those 60 beds, the city has 7, and we contract with the city for those 7 beds. And there are restrictions on who gets to come to jail to try to manage that population at the numbers that it's at. So right now the jail is restricted to Class A and B felonies, people that are arrested for those crimes, and mandatory arrests like DUIs and assault for thieves, domestic violence, looting, and those crimes. So all the other crimes that don't fit one of those bills, they don't get to come to jail. They are most often referred to the courts, and they bypass jail until a judge orders them to jail.
So Jeff, would you like to kind of address the city's concerns and what they're looking at for potential solutions?
Yeah, so some of our concerns, and please Chief Beeson can correct me when I say something wrong, but concerns are our inability to get people into the Mason County Jail. We do have the contracted 7 beds, but often what happens is if an inmate is being held on both city and county charges until the warrant is confirmed, that's what my understanding in the community calls a golden ticket. And until the warrant is confirmed, that inmate on city charges can't get booked into jail. So it's important for us to have the ability, and I know it's important for the Sheriff's Department to have the ability to hold people accountable. One of the items we're looking at to address that accountability piece is contracting with the Nisqually facility in, what is that, just outside of Lacey, for jail services up to 20 beds per month that we pay on a per diem basis. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We're just finalizing that contract now. It will be coming before City Council for their consideration on November 15th and December 6th. And then at that point, we'll begin using that facility, utilizing that facility, and figuring out a way to transport our inmates to that facility when needed. So that's kind of what we're looking at. The City is considering the 2023 budget at the moment, and in that 2023 budget, the City Council has at least preliminarily authorized the use of reserve funding so that the city can hold people accountable when the officers feel the need to put that person in jail. So that's what we're looking at the moment, and moving forward, unfortunately, because we're using reserve funds, we're only going to be able to maintain that program for 2023, and we need the ability to hold people obviously accountable past 2023. So looking at solutions for that end, and I'm glad everybody's here to talk about finding solutions.
Sheriff, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think considering on Tuesday you're going to have a new sheriff, I'd leave that to Under Sheriff Adams because I'm on the short time. The only thing I would add to this entire thing is I really think that the idea of having this meeting like this today and what you're doing here is really good, whoever decided to start doing this, and I think it's probably one of the most productive things we've seen in quite some time. So thank you for doing that. If Travis has something that he wants to add from our new sheriff's perspective or what he's thinking.
Yeah, the only thing I'd probably add is that we've had discussions from the Sheriff's Office with our Board of County Commissioners about also doing some outsourcing, and we're waiting for the city to do all the heavy lifting on finishing up the contract so that we can just use their work and not have to redo it. And then we'll be coming back to our commission to talk about something similar. I think we're in the same boat where long-term outsourcing is probably not the best option, best use of funds, but in the short term, for the crisis we have, we're hoping to do a similar type of outsourcing, one, so that we can fully utilize the 60-bed capacity that we have right now with the number of people we have. We can arrest right up to the line and hold accountability while still having that relief valve of having Nisqually for some other arrests and move people back and forth. But at the end of the day, I think we're all going to have to come together and talk about what the long-term plan is, because being able to resolve the increased need for more beds and a better facility in Mason County is something that we're going to have to tackle. It's never going to get cheaper. I mean, we've had conversations for all the years that I've been here, and it's a long time now, about how expensive it is, and we can't do it right now, and strangely it hasn't got a dime cheaper every single year that we've been talking about it. So glad that we're here, glad that we're talking about it, and look forward to moving forward with some sort of resolution.
So to give you a high level overview of what the county's done over the years, predates myself, but I have read back on a lot of the studies that have been done. A number of different solutions were looked at. So they looked at how do we partner? Can we partner with a neighboring county? Worked with Grace Harbor originally to say, hey, can we come together? We both have aging infrastructure. We both need a newer facility. Can we work together on this stuff? I believe that Grace Harbor ultimately dropped off that, so it came back to just to Mason County. And the estimates that I have and the estimates that I continue to get emailed about are anywhere from 35 million to 90 million, but those were estimates that were done back in 2021. So back in 2021, interest rates were quite a bit lower than they are today, so those numbers would be very different, I think, if we looked at today. The proposal, one of the proposals that we've seen, I think it's the most recent proposal, was a public-private partnership. So basically how that works in general is that you have private funds that come in and actually build the jail, and then we would lease the jail from that private entity for a period of time, let's say 30 years, and at the end of that 30-year period, you're basically leasing the home. So at the end of that 30-year period, there may be a cost of having to purchase what is remaining, but it is, I've seen it done in other governmental entities, and it's an expensive alternative to move forward on. So that is some of the challenges that we have, and the funding for it. So we've talked a little bit with our lobbyists, the county hires, to help work with our state legislature on possible funding solutions for our issues that we have. The Association of Counties got together, and a lot of us smaller counties said, jails are a big issue, corrections are a big issue, we need support. What does that support look like? It's most likely funding. The problem with that is that the larger counties said, we're not interested. And so just with the small counties, I believe that Deborah told us that it was over $2 billion in requests, which they accumulated within about a 2-week period for when they asked the counties to say, if you received help from the state, what would that help look like? $2 billion. So just from our internal perspective, I don't see a lot of solutions coming from the state level with assistance in that funding. Actually, we're currently going through union negotiations with our corrections, and I can tell you that it's a difficult process right now. We at Mason County are facing some of the same challenges that all of our neighboring counties are. And whether it's a law enforcement or a corrections career, we're having difficulty finding people that want to get into that. Mason County currently has a $10,000 hiring bonus for individuals that would be paid over a 3-year period. And I think that we've attracted 1 or 2 that are actually interested in that. So I'm not sure that continuing to throw money at the problem is something that is a solution, but that's definitely things that we're looking at. So, any other comments from city council members or commissioners? Any questions?
Just see if Jeff can explain how we utilize forks as well.
Yeah, so the Forks facility, when someone is sentenced from the municipal court for a long term, I don't know what the bright line is, but I would imagine something like 6 months or more. The facility in Forks makes a round robin, brings a van down and picks people up from here, from the Thurston County region, even as far as Chehalis, and we'll take them back up to Forks. The rate on that is $55 a day, but it's a 6-hour round trip, so you can imagine that doesn't happen very often. But it is a solution for us for longer term.
Thank you.
In the county, myself, I've reached out to Forks also to inquire about the possibility of doing some housing up there, and that's exactly what they told me. It's $55 a day. They have, as of yesterday, they had 20 beds available, so there is space. They do have the staffing right now. And they also said that they could do a once-a-week run, you know, a transport run back and forth between Forks and down here. So there is a possibility there for us to.
Mark, even if you got $50 million to build a jail, I mean, how are we going to solve the staffing issues? I mean, it might be irrelevant. I hear Thurston County has tons of beds, but it's only half full because they don't have the staff there either.
That's an issue statewide.
Yeah.
Well, nationwide, honestly.
And I don't know. Nisqually says that they have staff, and I don't know why they have staff. I think that it has to do with the different set of rules that's associated with it. I know they don't have to go to the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission to the state academy, and I don't know if their retirement systems are more attractive, or I don't know the specifics of that. But somehow they've got people.
Could be just tribal members.
Yeah, it could be too. Yeah.
It could also
Yeah,
be
for sure.
location. They're closer to Olympia. They have more
Yeah,
people.
and Tacoma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they do pay a little bit more, but they don't have like the benefits that we do either.
So as the county is kind of discussing the jail, if you're still receiving estimates and those types of things, building a new one, has there been any discussion about potential revenue sources associated with building a new jail, other than the state?
The revenue source that we tend to go to is real estate, the first 25% of real estate excess tax.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our main funding source for the majority of our capital facilities. We have diverted some of our road levy money to the general fund to cover trafficking. So it's basically freeing up general fund dollars that could be used elsewhere within the general fund realm. But that's something that is challenged too. So as we look forward and we look at the impact on our roads and the ability for us to actually do the amount of work that needs to be done to maintain our roads, that doesn't even include the improvements that we have. That there's an impact associated with that.
So there's also a property tax levy that is in RCW that would be, I think, in 5 or 6 year increments that we looked at a few years ago that would generate, I think, like $25 million over the life of that levy. A few years ago, we also put on the ballot the additional, the 0.3% public safety sales tax, and that was voted down 60 to 40 in the community. So we have looked at those revenue options before. I would say from my perspective, there's got to be more conversation on that with the community, and there has to be some more buy-in. And I think that's one of the areas where we've struggled. And I think one of the things that comes back to us is what's the plan for that. And so I think we need to have a little bit more internal discussion about what it is we want to do at a facility. We don't want to build a facility that we can't staff. So we have to kind of take a short, medium, and long-term approach to solving this issue. Short, obviously, being a potential partnership with Nisqually or Forks or some other outsourcing plan in the short term, and then really diving into that staffing issue that's critical countywide, statewide, rather here. And I can tell you that we've been at this for a few years now. On the commission, and everybody's frustrated. The city's frustrated, the county's frustrated, law enforcement's frustrated, our constituents are frustrated. The only people who aren't frustrated by this are criminals. And so it's really incumbent upon us to kind of get our act together and figure out what it is we're willing to ask our constituents to contribute to this. The funding that we got in the 1980s to build the facility that we have was part of the Sentencing Reform Act, and and the legislature was really helpful with that. But the priority seems to be in Olympia to move away from an incarceration model. And we've done a great job in this community of coming up with alternative sentencing programs, therapeutic programs, and electric home monitoring, and you name it. We've been, I think, a leader statewide in implementing those kinds of programs. But there remains that lack of accountability for folks who aren't ripe for those types of programs, and we need to be able to hold them accountable and have them pay their debts to society. And that's a conversation about justice for victims as well. And so, we need to be having these conversations, not just with each other, but with the community, and start to recognize, and understand what they would be willing to contribute to a project like this long term.
Any other questions or comments about this issue?
I've got just a couple. So one, on the staffing issue, I would say that being in this profession for the better part of 3 decades now, I can tell you that staffing is cyclical. We go through periods where we don't have a lot of people applying, and then we go through periods where we've got plenty of people coming through on the list. I think right now, with lots and lots of open jobs on the market, and we're competing with a lot of private sector and other things, we're probably in a low period now, and I'm not as concerned about staffing in the long run. The other point I would probably make about building a new facility is we did a pretty good job in our research, I think, of what the county needed for the next 25 years when we did our original project, but I don't think that we did a whole lot of research on what the options were for actually building and constructing a facility moving forward. And I think that there's a lot of options out there that we did not explore and haven't explored yet. I know that there are facilities that can be built in a modular fashion where the footprint for a large facility is there. The infrastructure for that large facility is built as far as kitchens and laundry and all those things, but a smaller holding area is built with the idea that you can expand that at 10 years or at 20 years as that need grows. And so I think that there's a lot of construction options out there that we haven't really spent a significant amount of time reviewing. And then the other thing that I would point out is, yeah, we've talked about what we need to do with the community and getting them involved. I would say that if we're going to look at what our options are for financing, building, and all of those things, we've got some amazing people in Mason County with some amazing backgrounds, from everything from finance to architecture to all kinds of things. And I've had numerous people in the community with some pretty impressive backgrounds say, hey, if you put a committee together, we will find some amazing people to be on that committee and do the type of research and looking into options that you may not have the time or the bandwidth or the expertise to do. And so I think if we got some serious conversations going about looking into our options for types of construction and financing and all those things, that we've got an untapped resource that if we utilize them, one, we'll get buy-in, and two, we'll probably get an amazing product out on the other side.
And I know I've mentioned this before, but we're just about to start construction on the C Street landfill cleanup. That, well, should start soon, but the contract will be approved on November 15th, and then that construction project will happen the first several months of 2023. But that is, I believe, about 15-acre site, 4 of which will need to be contained because it's part of that piece. But we would be more than happy to partner with the county to give you that piece of property, accepting the contaminated area, and partner with you on infrastructure needs to build the facility on that site. Yeah. So, I've said that before, but I just want to say it again, just so everybody knows. And the other thing is, Commissioner Schutte mentioned the public safety tax that wasn't accepted by the community in 2019. But if we could show that revenue, or if the county could show that revenue would go toward holding people accountable, and we have this pilot program with, it's not really a pilot program, but the outsourcing program that we have for the next year, we show we have the ability to do that. Is that something, just kind of throwing ideas out there that we can have a solution to this in the next 5 years or so? Because that construction is going to take a while.
Sure.
I was kind of back to what both of you guys have said, that I'm predicting, but I think that you're starting to see public sentiment across the state of Washington change. People went for this idea that's out there now against what most people in law enforcement were recommending. Things have gone horribly wrong in so many places that Communities all over the state are coming to the Chiefs and Sheriff's Association saying, what do we need to do to get this back? I think there was a group of legislatures that supported us in this thing, and there were some that weren't, and now that's turning towards them. The public's starting to say, we're tired of watching this mayhem go on, and we want to see it go back, and I'm hoping that in the next few years that will be a good driver that will support more people to come forward for this. I'm hearing it in our community, you know, about those. The other thing that I would hope that would happen, I'm looking, and I only think Commissioner Netherland maybe, I'm not sure, there might be somebody else, but I think we're almost exactly the same age, but I go back to a newspaper article that I've handed Chief Hansen numerous times that I hope that this group, or the formation of the group, considers. When that jail was built, the citizens were sold that was going to be the never-ending jail, that we would have all this capacity and space. If you look at that article that came out the day the jail opened, the comment was made, I believe it was by one of our judges, that the day that the jail opened, it was overfull. And people were told that it was going to be this thing, and it truly wasn't what it was told to be. We were in high school then and discussed that as high school students in civics class, and we're told that we're the ever-expanding jail. And it truly has not been. And there are a number of us that remember that in the community, that maybe we were sold something we weren't. It wasn't told to us correctly. And so I hope as we move forward to this, the consideration will be made that when the jail is built, that yes, we've got to build for the capacity and we've got to build for what we have financially, but you have to look down the road. It has to be just more than enough to fill it for today, because tomorrow's needs are going to exceed. And I don't know, I won't even be around by the time the second one, but if it's not done fairly and honestly to the public, there are still many, many people in this community that remember that being told to them. And they were very, very walking back on supporting a new jail, because is it going to be what is said it's going to be? And as we move forward with that, you have to build forward. And I know it's expensive, but there's a lot of people that remember that, and they were apprehensive, was the word I want, to support something new. And I think that's going to change, and I think we can do a better job of reaching the people with that.
Yeah, if I can piggyback on what Sheriff Salisbury is saying, as the city's been looking at outsourcing to Nisqually, I've met with the Sheriff's Department multiple times, because I don't want anything that we're looking at to come out of the blue and blindside them. Ultimately, we would like to have a partnership with the county as far as holding folks accountable. I have a radio on my desk and I listen all day, and I hear my officers go out and contact folks that literally have a deck of cards worth of warrants that aren't bookable. I get calls from people in the community all the time that want to know why these low-level offenders aren't being held accountable. I hear from the courts telling me that people aren't showing up for their court dates because they know they're just going to get a warrant that nobody can book them into jail for. So our outsourcing is a way to try to help us hold these folks accountable now, that the community will see that we're making things safer for them, and folks will get the message that we're not going to tolerate that type of behavior in our city anymore. But ideally, all of us working together is going to be far more productive than us working separately. So my hope is that we've done the heavy lifting. Hopefully I'm going to hear about that contract later on today, and we'd be able to have a partnership where each agency has the ability to book people that need to go and work together in order to get them transported out to wherever we do outsourcing. For us, it's going to be in Nisqually so that we can get people out there sooner rather than later. But at the end of the day, anything that we're doing, that we're working together, is probably going to be far more effective and efficient than us working separately.
A number of years ago, Mark, we weren't here for that, and the commissioners could comment on the dollar value, but we did at one time, we're in a position that we outsourced, and it became extraordinarily expensive to do that. However, during that time when we could book people into jail, it was the first time in 30 years that the crime rate had actually come down, because people realized that if I get stopped right now, I'm being held, I'm not going anywhere. And word got out very, very quickly that when the arrests were made, you were going to jail. And those years, during that time period, the crime rate started to come down at a very significant, noticeable rate in the community. But at the same time, that outsourcing was so expensive for the county that, you know, it put us in a hole, quite honestly. But we know that if we can react and to the issue, like the chief has said, that we can keep that crime rate can turn around. And it did almost immediately, but the costs, again, were a factor in that.
I think we all agree that the issue is how do we hold people accountable and where do we hold them accountable at, right? So being able to follow through with some of the penalties associated with actions that people take is something that we all are interested in finding solutions for. So I appreciate the city working with our sheriff's department. I know that the sheriff's department is concerned, has similar concerns that the city has, hears similar things from our constituents. So finding a solution for that is definitely where I want to focus on. So how do we focus into the future of finding alternatives that work for the both of us, because it's going to improve our community.
Mark, can I just ask one question for Chief Hampton?
Absolutely.
So Chief, what percentage of your population, your inmates right now are pretrial versus sentenced?
About 2/3.
So 2/3 are awaiting trial?
Yep. Yep. And that's changed. That really hasn't changed a whole lot over the years. What has changed a lot is the classification of the inmates we have incarcerated, because for whatever reason since COVID, more people are required individual rooms, and when that happens, it takes up more space because there's 2 beds in every room, and if a person's required an individual room, then basically one person's taking up 2 beds. So that's kind of, yes, it's tough.
And some of those COVID restrictions have been removed.
Yeah, they've all been pretty much set aside now.
So looking forward, do you think that's going to impact the ability to bunk more people in one room?
Well, right now we don't have a physical space problem, because remember, we've got 93 beds in the jail. Our operational capacity is 80, but we only have enough staff to keep 60 people in there. So it's not really a physical space problem right now. It's 95% a staffing problem. So that's really what, you know, I wish I had the golden ticket to figure out how to hire staff.
Yeah, I heard on the news that unemployment was still hanging around 3% nationwide, which is a 40-year low.
Yeah. And then one thing, well, I was going to say one more thing about the jail population. So the low classification of crimes that end up in jail, those are the people that, you know, do our laundry, they do our litter crew, they, you know, they're some of them are on work, we restarted the work release program. They're on home monitoring. They're really not suckers of resource. Those minimum security long-term people that Forks wants us to send to them are the people that are useful to us, you know, the inmates. And so that's kind of problematic in itself. And then if we were to take a snapshot at the jail population now, versus what it was 7 years ago, before we had to implement the booking restrictions, the population, the risk of the inmates in jail is much higher than what it was back then, because we were taking those low-level crimes and those people are spending pretrial time in jail. And now, since the booking restrictions and COVID and everything else, and staffing crisis, the only people that come to jail are the high-risk people. You know, they're the people who are arrested on Class A and B felonies, and the domestic violence offenders, and the DUIs that can't be released. You know, so we've ended up with a jail full of higher-risk inmates that require more attention from us than what we did 7 or 8 years ago. So it's weird how it changes, you know, and especially the legislature, you know, when the legislature changes the rules, for instance, drug arrests, you know, that's impacted our population. It's lowered it dramatically. And that's just not us. I mean, that's statewide. I mean, you can go talk to any jail in the state, and you'll see that their populations are like half of what they normally are. And it's because of the rules that, you know, have come forth out of the legislature in the last, and COVID. COVID had a lot to do with it too. But It's, so the trend, the trend right now is don't incarcerate, put them in programs, get them help, get them fixed. And it's cyclical, and that's just how it happens over the years, and it'll, like the sheriff said, it'll reverse, and people will get tired of getting victimized, and then the public and the legislature will decide that no more, we're gonna make drugs illegal again, so, I don't know, that's just my take, after seeing this for 30 years.
Carefully point out that not all legislators.
Joe?
Yeah, I recognize the staffing challenges, and I've heard the word cyclical a bunch of times, which is interesting to hear. So, from the council's perspective, at least my perspective on the council, we worked really hard 5-6 years ago to establish, because we're in difficult financial times, we still are, by the way, we worked really hard to establish some strong fiscal policy, and fairly conservative fiscal policy, I'll say. And in one of those areas, we worked to establish a 20% strategic fund balance in our general fund. Next year, we're going to eat into that fund balance to fund jail services. And unfortunately, what I'm hearing today isn't necessarily encouraging, because we're just on the brink of having discussion, right? So we're going to go through a year, and we're going to turn it off, and we're going to be right back where we're at today, possibly even in worse condition than we are today. So, and the people of our community are going to be extremely frustrated with that. And I'm not looking forward to having to kind of go down that path. So I'm very interested in accelerating this. And I also kind of just want to read, from our budget book, page 51, talking about targeted fund balances, basically saying adequate fund balances are maintained to allow the city to continue providing services to the community in case of unexpected emergencies, unfunded mandates, and/or economic downturns. So I'm not convinced today that our investment in jail services in Nisqually or in Forks are the result of, an unexpected emergency, an unfunded mandate, or an economic downturn necessarily. So that said, I'm, cautiously optimistic that, these steps we're going to implement will take us forward, but I'm very much looking forward to tomorrow starting the conversation on what we do.
Joe, I think you're correct there on the cyclical thing, and I'm not sure how this gets this way, but in my last 50 years here, living here, on this issue, over the last 40 at least, on the jail issue, it's just the way the world works, I guess, but we seem to always fall into the wrong cycle of things occurring in our community. And I say this even from our last one, you've heard me talk to you about this at meetings, is that each time we go out for a jail, we have somebody else's bond or levy issue going. Oh, we don't want to disturb that, so we don't want to go with the jail. And then a little while later, we kind of get in this cycle that then somebody else runs one, then it's schools, then it's fire, whatever. We never hit that jump in spot, it seems, the right time, because we always seem to follow the last levy or bond that was passed. And when you pass for a new school in one area, people are, oh my gosh, can't afford this, I don't want to do it again. We keep kind of following those things. And I don't know how you get out of that cycle, but it's been very cyclical for us in this, and it's very challenging for the community to vote yes, 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 yes all the time. And but I go back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. I'm reading a thing by another retired sheriff wrote this month. The communities are, they're getting to where they've had it across the state of Washington. And many of those communities, as you saw that video a while put out by the mayors of the greater Seattle area saying, listen, we're done with this. We've got to go back out and support these things. They're changing as well because they're realizing it's just hammering these communities. And I particularly, in the next few years, hope that this gets resolved because as a regular citizen in the community, I hope that if I call that there's been a police officer or sheriff's deputy show up and that the individual that is doing these things that are not okay do get taken away and something done with them, because otherwise we're going to look like many communities that are surrounding us that aren't doing so well if we don't solve this issue.
I wanted to make a point that we have capacity, but we don't have a staffing. That's what I'm hearing. And why don't we do something about staffing that's not law enforcement related? Why can't we have more affordable housing and put it in the contract so our labor contracts? Why can't we have below market rate housing for our officers and emergency providers? Why can't we have better schools so that more people be attracted to come out to Shelton and live in Shelton and work in Shelton? I think if we want to break the cycle, we don't react to the cycle that's going on, but we create a whole new paradigm of creating a location where people want to live and work, and that we staff it among ourselves and get out of all the different supply chains and work within our own community, within our community. That's my goal and vision, and I think that we should stop being reactive and start being really proactive about making life better in Shelton and Mason County, and that we will, take pride in working, and everyone here takes the small county discount to work here, already, right? So why don't we do more soft things, soft measures that not necessarily from the general fund, but can we create like a housing situation, below market rate housing for this community, where people want to, oh, well, I want to go work, forget the $10,000, that's going to go away, but I'm going to have a nice apartment or a nice house to live in when I get off work, my hard job, So whether it be education or emergency services. So I think if we want to really get out of the cycle, we should start doing different things instead of being reactive. And I also want to point out that we don't have everyone here at the table. And last time I asked that we have a representation from the tribes here, and I don't know if they're even invited. So I think this is a whole community thing, and we should make the whole environment different. Instead of just reacting to what's a problem that's in front of us, we should think about the whole skull and scape. So that's my point of view. Thank you for listening.
I was going to ask, what do you think what volume of your population in the jail is suffering with mental illness? I know you're not a psychiatrist, and
I would say at least 60%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we had better
Of some
mental
sort.
health support in the community, that might actually mitigate some of your population, or you're talking about people that are past mental health issues and have become so violent that they can't be managed.
Yeah, there's lots of programs and there's lots of help available for both people that are not in jail and people that are in jail. The legislature throws money, they make money available for peer counselors, for reentry programs, for mental health counselors. There's lots of things available, and it's not like we don't have the people that come into the jail to try to help people, set them on the right path when they get out, because we do. We have services, and there's services in our community. But what I see is that they're grant funded, right? So like telecare is a great example of what was a really good thing here, and then it went away because the funding went away. And so when the funding goes away, the programs go away, the service goes away, and then somebody else has to pick up on it, or maybe they don't pick up on it. So I don't know. To me, if somebody could figure out how to coordinate all the help pour it into one funnel, and then have the water come out of the bottom of the funnel so it's concentrated, and not everybody's trying to take a little bit of this money, a little bit of that money, and then run with their program, and that person runs with their program. They're kind of doing the same things, but they're really not doing the same things, and it's haphazard in my mind. And so I think if somehow we could figure out a better way to coordinate all those things together and have a concentrated focus, I think that could make a difference. But the people that are coming to jail, these are the high crime people. They're the people who are committing felonies. You got to remember, our booking restrictions prohibit those low-level crimes from coming into jail.
Right.
And so, we see the really bad ones that end up at Western State Hospital. They're wiping stuff on the walls, and they're really, really bad off. And so how do you help those people? I don't, we try, but at the end of the day, they're the same people that keep coming in and coming in and coming in and coming in.
It's never been law enforcement's job it's by default, it's become law enforcement's job to deal with mental illness. But the real issue of mental illness is not being dealt with on a state level.
Yeah.
Because Eastern and Western state hospitals are complete disasters.
Yep.
And nobody, I have family members that have worked in both of them.
Yep.
And it's just a nightmare.
100%.
And the state has to fix that
Yep.
before they can do anything else.
Yep.
Western State,
Don't want to
they have
interrupt
a,
the conversation. I need to move on to our next agenda topic. I think that it's obviously one that we could dedicate a ton of discussion. We could dedicate the entire 2 hours.
Mark,
Mark,
I
can
understand you want to move on, but can we
Yeah.
get a commitment that we're gonna take this on here in pretty rapid fashion from the group, at least from the elected bodies? I think this is a priority of the council, but
like,
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
commission on board with moving this forward?
can I jump on with Joe? I just want to say that, you know, for those, I share his concern. For those of us who are planners, 2023 is basically gone in my mind already,
Yep.
right? I mean, it's
Over
a
and
gone
done.
year already. So if we're talking about a short term of funding for outsourcing, you know, I don't want to have another government meeting to plan our next meeting. So, you know, I would like to say it would be a good idea if we could get some commitment to move forward with some sort of committee to pick up the baton where our last research from KMB dropped off. And I don't care what that looks like. I mean, I would recommend maybe an RFD, if you will, you know, a request for volunteers from our community. We could put something together and find a good group of folks that could do the research on the KMB, have some conversations with staff, pick up where we left off, and start doing some solid research moving forward, rather than waiting for the next meeting to talk about what we're going to do again.
I love the idea.
Thank you, guys, appreciate it.
So I will say I'm totally willing to start that process going and get some paperwork and some, we've got a great social media outlet that we could get something written up to start generating some interest in the community. I'm sure that the sheriff, you know, he knows like 65 of the 66,000 people in this county, so I'm sure he can find somebody that would work real well on there. So if this group is committed to wanting to do that, I am more than willing to get that ball rolling and get it rolling quickly.
So I can follow up with our commissioners at the county on that at our next briefing, so we can talk about that, maybe another commissioner discussion, because I don't have time to get it on the agenda. But definitely something that we could talk about if my commissioners are interested in that topic.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to the next topic, talking about some property that the county's had for sale for many years. Probably about a year.
Almost a year.
So we have 6 parcels that are basically adjacent to our new public works facility. And they run right along 101 and they end where 102 comes down, so they end Airport Road. The county declared those properties surplus. We went out and got the market value of what those properties were. And they've been actively marketed by Richard Beckman and his group to potential buyers. We have had some interest. We've had some individuals put down earnest money, then trying to get financing to do some of their projects. I think that the common thing that I've heard is that individuals want to put some type of a motel or an RV parking lot, and I think a lot of that is to support the raceway here, people that come in and visit here. But none of those actually came through. So they didn't actually get the funding to do their work, and they ran out of time to get those things done. We have received a few other offers that are pretty considerably below market value. So we really can't accept those offers because obviously this doesn't work that way in government. So we are evaluating whether we continue to keep those properties on the market. And maybe we want to look at, are there other alternatives that the county could utilize that space for some of our needs? So I'm going to turn it over to my commissioners. Maybe you guys have anything that you'd like to say about those parcels?
And for me, I'd like to see that they go commercial. I think it benefits the county and the city and our residents. If we could put some heads in beds, I would love that. I know LTAC community would love that. So I would love to see it stay on the market for that purpose.
I agree.
Sure.
So 3 years ago, the city, vis-a-vis our lobbyist, one of the things we had been hearing for years was about the economic stagnation along this corridor due to the latecomers agreement that was in place by the state of Washington. Vis-a-vis our lobbyists, we worked with Representative Griffey, McEwen, and Senator Shelton to ultimately get that wiped clean. And we've been just chomping at the bit to see economic development in this area. I absolutely would agree with Commissioner Trask. You know, I would love to see that property be marketed, and I'd love to work together to market that. A for sale sign, in my opinion, isn't necessarily marketing. So if there's things that we'd like to do in terms of coming up with sub-area plans or, you know, other things that may even require an investment from the city, I would be supportive of that. Yeah, using it for governmental purposes or, you know, I think that would be counter to what our initiatives were with removing the latecomers agreement or sitting on the property and land banking. I don't think that would be a good move for economic development in this area. So I would love to, I'd love to talk more about this collaboratively, and I'd also like to kind of know more about some of the offers that you have had and why those have fallen through exactly. I know there's funding aspects of it, but again, what could we be doing between the city and the county to make that friendly for development for commercial purposes? Because quite frankly, we could definitely utilize that additional revenue to fund things like jail services and other things like that that aren't going to just be additional taxes and burdens to our existing population in Mason County.
The most recent offer that we received was about half of what the property is.
Is it possible to dedicate some of the land as a park, like maybe in the middle, and sell the other parcels to bring the value down so you can sell it? We just did that, or we are. Or is that we allowed to talk about that?
So Deputy Mayor Schmidt mentioned a sub-area plan, and if we put together a sub-area plan not just for those parcels, but also, you know, the wider general area within the UGA, that shows prospective investors that there's an identity that we want to see, right? And I know Jay Hill, our Community and Economic Development Director, has done several sub-area plans, and so have I, so that's something that we're familiar with, and I would be happy to partner with the county if that's something that you're interested in doing.
I was talking about our deal over on North Cliff area.
Yeah, so there's some open space requirements for each, but take a look at what that is, if it's a commercial area and whether open space would be appropriate there, you know, and a commercial development, those types of things, but we get into those details as part of the sub-area planning effort, and then present that to the county commission and the city council. You know, we can definitely do something like that moving forward in the future, and it ought not to take too long.
I was actually talking about the hospital property that we're negotiating. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's currently a trail there, but there's also sub-area planning effort. We're going to talk about comprehensive plans here in a minute. All those things can be dovetailed together.
So I mean, we have a number of major capital projects and parks that we're looking at right now. So we don't know that we have a lot of capacity for creating new parks, just in my personal opinion. But we do have a number of them that have some pretty big dollar value that we'd like to. We've been working on it for a long time. We'd like to see some of those improvements occur, and so that's our focus.
Yeah. No, I just meant to just keep it for that use, and then they buy on either side, or, you know, just a little spot to bring the value down so you can sell the property.
So just some history on it, just so you know, it's been more than just a sign on it. It's been marketed by realtors, but it's also been marketed through the EDC, and it's been on the market since 4/19.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that property is, although it is owned by the county, it is not owned by the general fund. It's owned by the road department. And so for us to take it and turn it into a park, we have to purchase it at the fair market value. We don't just have the ability to just switch it over and say, okay, we're not going to build on it. The cost would be, you know, really millions just to have that, and we just don't have that ability just to turn it off and do that. So I just wanted to share that with you, but it has been marketed. I've seen quite a few that have been interested, and when we first put it up as a commission, we put it up because there was supposedly interest for it. Even back then, I tried to explain if there was interest for it, they would put in offers on it. It doesn't even have to be on the market. These people that actually build hotels, they know how to do this, and we keep trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, as these people do it, and they try to make this grand offer for it, but then at the same time, they don't actually have the money for it. So they go out, they're trying to get their investors, and we hold it off the market for them so that they can do it, and we just keep walking into that. If it was the proper place to put the hotel, it would already be there. Now, it doesn't mean you don't keep pushing and keep trying to find that right person, because the demographics are huge. You have, aside from all the need that you have for short-term motel, hotel, you also have this place right here, which is huge, but you also have the correction center, which have people come visit, which is huge, and you also have the training for the state patrol. So the numbers are all there, but they have not found its way to be perfect for the investor. Now, another problem is you have an issue with the economy at different times. And you're not going to just give them something for free, because it's still going to cost them, you know, $20 million to build it. And the property is not the biggest issue that's stopping it. So it'd be nice if we could just do the I Dream of Jeannie thing and make it happen. It just doesn't happen that way. But it has been marketed very heavily. And we've taken in a lot of different offers on it. They're just usually not the right ones in order to actually build it. And I want to say, you can't just pick and choose when you're the county or the cities. You know, somebody comes in and makes an offer and says, no, I don't like you. You're not what I want. We can't do that. We have to accept it. It's on the market as a fair market offer, arm's length transaction. And you can't pick or choose. We get sued immediately for that.
I've successfully in a couple of communities worked for, have been able to do joint development agreements, public-private partnerships to, when the city or the county identified a particular property and wanted a use on it, to actually find a way to put it together, to go out and attract people to make that happen through long-term land leases, through tax incentives, things like that. There's a lot of tools that, you know, with like a comprehensive plan, it could start with a sub-area plan, it could start with, you know, our comprehensive plan, something like that, or it could come from a site plan and a development agreement and finding someone. We had a meeting yesterday with opportunity zone developers who are looking at this area because of the federal tax credits that come along with it. So there are people out there who could probably take advantage of it if we put the right package together for them. And so that's something that, you know, I think the city and the county could work together towards, to making sure it has all of the right infrastructure components and all that. And we could get the use that, you know, we want to see there, which I think ostensibly is you know, more tourist oriented commercial. So I'd be happy to help bring that experience to any kind of a future discussion with that.
And we did rezone it to be able to do that, just so you know. We didn't just sit on it, because it was literally government zoned.
I'll add to that. I think, you know, I'm old enough to remember, you know, when we were told if you surplus it, they'll come, they'll build on it. If you rezone it, they'll come, they'll build on it. And so, you know, I'm a little bit maybe somewhere probably between Commissioner Nevlin and Commissioner Trask on this. I mean, I'm certainly open to a conversation around a sub-area plan. We've talked about that in the UGA, you know, and maybe it wouldn't be maybe a planned action EIS like we did in Belfair, but some other planning, you know, venture to you know, evaluate what we can do and what we can't do. But you know, I would just candidly ask, you know, down the road, there's hundreds of acres that are owned by a developer and have been for decades, you know, a long time, several years, over a decade, and they have yet to turn dirt in a way that has produced anything from a commercial development perspective. And so, you know, I would just say, you know, candidly, why do we think if we go a half a mile or a mile up the road that that's going to be any different? The challenges exist there. You know, and I think that's a signal to us that you know, perhaps the market isn't ripe yet for some of that development, and there's some more work that we need to do on our side, perhaps to go through that process. But you know, certainly open to a conversation about a sub-area plan. But you know, we do have a lot of glaring space needs at the county as well, and I know the council has been you know, resistant or uncomfortable with some of our other real estate acquisitions downtown, and certainly have heard those issues raised to us. And you know, so I want to know from the council, perhaps, you know, where are you comfortable with us investing in our facilities for our workforce that provide services countywide? You know, if we're not going to do it at 101 and 102, where are we comfortable having those conversations for expansion around our downtown campus? So I think there's a lot more to it than just trying to attract economic development, which God bless it, we're all proponents of it. We wouldn't have surplus that property if we didn't want to see development and growth and opportunity come to Mason County and Shelton. But we have to be realistic about our growing needs in the county for our workforce, whether it's a jail or general government services or anything along those lines. You know, talk to Dave and Kel about their building. Talk to our coroner, who we're going to probably move for like the 5th or 6th time, you know, to find more space. You know, so it's just, those are the kinds of things that we have to evaluate it against. We're not just able to kind of look at it through rose-colored glasses and think that if we make a couple of planning adjustments that we'll get, you know, big economic development project, but certainly open to those conversations.
Well, we still have C Street, we could do a land swap.
I'd be wide open to discuss